and welcome to the first episode of The Jankyard, the podcast. I'm sorry, every time I say that, I love it. The Jankyard, the podcast. But it sounds like it's something out of the movie Spaceballs. Spaceballs, the breakfast cereal. Spaceballs, the blanket. Spaceballs, the flamethrower. The Jankyard, the podcast. So, I've somehow turned into Mel Brooks. Anyways, let's get rolling, folks. My name is JT, and I'm here as your host every week as we weave our way through the piles and piles of rubble that makes up the Jankyard. I love what I'm doing here. We're putting together Jank in Magic the Gathering, and especially playing on Arena, but we're also going to be doing some on Magic Online as well. And we're just also, for the podcast, we're just going to be talking about Magic. You know, it can be paper, it can be Arena, it can be Magic Online. We've already been streaming for a few months now, and if you haven't checked us out, please do. It's at twitch.tv/jankyardmtg. That's all one word. We stream on Wednesdays and Sundays, and plus maybe some bonus days through the week. And by all means, please check out our social media channels. We're JankyardM on Twitter. We're JankyardMTG on Facebook. And on those platforms, we give you updates on when we're going to go live, just in case we decide to do a surprise stream. Plus, we've started putting up deck techs of some of our favorite janky decks. At this point, just in Arena, but we're going to have some in Pioneer and possibly even Modern as well down the road. And those videos are all on our YouTube channel, which is Jankyard MTG. And plus, every week we put one game or part of a game from our weekly stream on, and it's called the Jank Light of the Week. So check that out. You'll see a fun janky deck in action. So what exactly is the Jankyard? What am I trying to accomplish here? So let's talk about that. I mean, the biggest thing, I've been playing Magic now for more than 5 years. And when I got into it, I fell in love with the idea of playing different cards to work together to do fun, cool things. Now I've come to realize very quickly that, you know, that's not always going to work. You're not always going to win. And ultimately, that is the premise of this game. This game is based on being victorious, whether it's one-on-one or you're playing in a commander pod. You're ultimately trying to win and make your opponents lose. Playing janky combinations and decks that are maybe not the most tuned towards winning, you know, you're not always going to be successful. But it's what is your goal? I mean, one of my biggest goals in Magic, yes, I like to win, don't get me wrong. And when I build decks trying to win as best as possible. But I like to have fun things happen. I like to see cards go off and combinations go off, and you're doing something wild and fun and different. And so that's why I like building what is called Jank. And so hence we've created this channel of content called the Jankyard. So I guess when we talk about Jank, let's dive into that. What exactly is Jank? So to me, Jank has a number of definitions, or a number of components to its definition, shall we say. To start with, it is fun combos and synergies that go together. Multiple cards that synergize to do really unusual and fun things in the game. And when you play it, you're like, wow, that was cool, that was fun. And even your opponents sometimes will be like, wow, that was really cool. I'm glad I was a part of that. That was fun. Another aspect of Jank, usually, are alternate win conditions, because traditionally alternate win conditions are very hard to achieve. But you get cards in Magic that say something to the general effect: if you do X, Y, Z. By the way, I'm Canadian, so it will always be Z, not Z. But if you do X, Y, and Z, then you're going to win the game. You will win the game, or your opponents will lose the game. Like, it's written right in the text. Uh, Traditionally, Wizards makes these combinations, or these cards, these alternate win conditions, or alt win cons, very difficult to work, because bypassing the traditional process of getting your opponent down to zero, that's got to come with a high price. So, for example, there's been a few alternate win conditions. One that I quite liked was Revel in Riches, which was a card in, I believe. Now I've got to look it up here. No, it was a card in Ixalan, and it was an enchantment. And so it was a black enchantment. It was 4 and a black, and yes, it was an Ixalan. And what it said was, whenever a creature and opponent dies, create a colorless treasure artifact token. And with treasures, you could tap to sack and to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. And then it says, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. So that was one of my favorites. Another one of my favorites by far was Triskaidekaphobia. Triska was also an enchantment, and you'll find a lot of these alt-win conditions are enchantments. 3 and a black enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep. Choose one. Either each player with exactly 13 life loses the game, then each player gains 1 life, or each player with exactly 13 life loses the game, then each player loses 1 life. So essentially it's the same thing. The first thing that it checks is, does anybody have 13 life? No? Okay. Next thing. Each player will either gain 1 life or lose 1 life. That's up to the decision of the controller of the enchantment. So, I mean, that's one. And the more recent one that I've played with on Arena is Attempts All-Seeing. And it's a 3 triple blue legendary creature Sphinx from M20. It's a 4/5, but one thing it has in it says, whenever Attempts All-Seeing deals damage to an opponent, you may reveal your hand. If cards with at least 6 different converted mana costs are revealed this way, that player loses the game. And by that player, they're referring to the player who took the opponent who took the damage. I pulled it off in Arena, but it is incredibly challenging, and I had to have an opponent who was moving very slowly, and I had to have cards to allow me to have more than 7 cards in my hand. All these little synergies, like, to pull these off, you usually need other things to work in your favor, other cards to come together to pull it off. And I think that's why I am really attracted to these alt-win conditions. Another thing I would consider jank are unusual tribes. Now, when I say unusual, let me preface this. Unusual in the sense that they're ones that are not usually used in any particular, popular in any particular constructive format, but they have pieces that can come together and work for you. They're not usually ones that are net decked. And we'll get into net decking later. For example, in Standard right now, I'm running a Satyr tribal deck. It's fun. And again, tribal decks, there's usually a lord or something that benefits you for playing multiple cards of that creature type or creature subtype. So it's synergy. It's combinations coming together, but in a different way, in a tribal way. Something else I really like playing are just quirky cards that can be very difficult or challenging to play, require huge build-arounds, but they're super powerful when put to proper use. There's a lot of different cards like that, and those are fun cards. They're the ones that, if you ever hear reviews of for limited, and they'll be called, well, people just say, well, those cards are stone unplayable. In limited, sure, they're usually very difficult to bring together, but if you can construct your deck in a certain way and get the stars to align, you can make it work. So those are fun too. Now, I gotta say, with jank, some decks that would be considered jank become very popular and very successful. They become top tier decks. And so, then are they really jank? I don't consider them janky if they're very successful. If they're proven to dominate the regular meta of a certain constructed type. Or be at the top. Maybe not dominate, but be at the top. Great examples. Recent example is Jeskai Fires. Fires of Invention is a janky card. I mean, it's an enchantment. It limits you to what you can do, but it allows you to vomit out cards that you might not otherwise be able to play. But that card has been turned into an incredibly effective deck. So to me, that's not very janky, because it is successful. And I know there is a weird dichotomy here. Don't get me wrong. I understand this. I want to make my jank decks as best as possible so I can succeed. However, if a deck becomes so successful that it is played by top players, it is one of the top ones in the worldwide meta of a certain format, then it really isn't janky. I guess that's kind of where I'm coming from. Part of playing jank is you're playing something unusual. You're catching your opponents off guard. Opponents, especially in tournaments, traditionally prepare for the standard decks you see in a meta. And if you're playing something completely off the wall, that gives you an advantage. By a janky deck becoming well played and successful in a meta, that really reduces it from being actually jank. So that's kind of where I stand on that front. So, I mean, let's talk about this. So, I kind of got into this at the beginning, but why do I love playing jank? I mean, that's the first question. Why jank? I mean, we've addressed the what jank. Now we're into the why jank. Why play it, and why do I play it? And because I have found right from the beginning, I love making these combinations go off. Combinations you maybe haven't thought of, or have thought, it's not worth it. There's a T-shirt out there that I just love. It's because there's all these T-shirts for modern tribes, and it's like says the name and then a slogan that fits for it. And for for jank, it says, "Jank, one win is all I need." And that's kind of what it feels like. Is if I could just pull this off once, if I could just see this happen in its glory, this domino hits this domino, hits this domino, hits this domino, and we pull off something marvelous. As long as it just happens once, that's all I ask for. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons. It's fun to try to put those together for me. It's like I think part of it is one of the reasons I love Magic. Maybe one of the top reasons. One of the top reasons I've started doing this is because I love building decks. Why do I love building decks? To me, they're puzzles. And you have all these pieces. And not just the cards of the pieces, but also the number of cards, the mana, all these things, your curve, all these things are pieces to a very complex puzzle. And you're trying to jam them together to make it look as best as possible. Because the pieces fit in, but maybe they look a little off. And so, I mean, that's one of the reasons, if any of you have seen the game that Richard Garfield, the creator of Magic, came out with a couple of years ago, Keyforge, I've played it. It's fine. It's a fine game. Again, it's a one-on-one matchup card game, but I don't like it nearly as much as Magic, not even close. And the biggest reason for me is in Keyforge, when you get a deck, like you buy the deck, it's made, and that deck has to stay together as that deck from then until the end of time. They make all these randomly created, thousands upon thousands of randomly created decks, and that's it. You buy a deck, that's your deck. I don't like that. I want to be the architect of my deck. I want to be the one fitting those pieces together. And so that's why I really love making fun decks, unusual decks. Because I also like to try to come up with things. Don't get me wrong, I steal ideas all the time. This idea here, this idea here. I'm like, wow, I never thought of that combo. I mean, some people told me when Truefire Captain came out in Guilds of Ravnica, and they said, hey, take a look at how that works with Star of Extinction. And there've been some videos already online, and I sat down like, oh my god, this is brilliant. This speaks to me. And how it worked is Truefire Captain was a white, red, 3/4 that, I think it's 3/4, that says when you do damage to it, whenever damage is done to it, that much damage is done to target player. Sorry, it's not 3/4, it's 4/3. It also has Mentor, but the key thing is whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player. So it doesn't matter how much damage, yes, 3 kills it, but sometimes it's dealt a lot more than that. Well, however much is dealt to it, you do that to target player. Star of Extinction does 20 damage to every creature on the battlefield. So if your opponent's at 20 or less, Truefire Captain getting hit with a Star of Extinction is a kill spell. But that's really difficult to pull off. Truefire Captain is 4 mana. Star of Extinction is 7 mana. So there is a lot of things you have to pull into alignment. But I saw this online, and I worked on it, and I took it to the first time I used it, I took it to my LGS. And I pulled it off. I had 2 Truefire Captains out. Bring out the Star of Extinction. The Star of Extinction is 5 in double red. And my opponent was at 30-some life because he had angels, Mardu angels, and he was gaining life. But because I had 2 Truefire Captains, they each did 20 damage to him. And I killed him. And that was a game that took us 25, 30 minutes because that deck was a Boros control deck. Yes, Boros control. It's a real thing. And so I just went off. And it was ridiculous, but I made it work. So that's kind of what we're talking about, and seeing unusual things like that happen. And yeah, while I'm not a fan of net decking, I also don't mind getting ideas from other people and online. You'll see on my stream, I really am happy to take suggestions from the viewers. I've sat on there times when we've built decks, and I've gotten suggestions, and we've tried things out, and then we'll test drive them. Like, oh, maybe let's cut this, and let's go with this. So, open to other people's ideas. It's not where I'm like, well, if it's not my idea, I don't want to try it. It's garbage. But at the same time, I want to try stuff that's unusual and it's off the beaten path. And I guess one of the things is if you play high-level competition and you play in tournament events, or you look at the top levels of the professional Magic scene, there's very little variety in the decks. There's a few really good decks because they realize, okay, these are the best ones that we're going to face. And Jank gives me that spice of life, that variety of spice that I totally crave. And so that's why I do it. That's why I want to make it happen. Now, I talked about net decking. Net decking is the practice of getting a deck list off the internet and building that either in paper or online or arena, and playing that in competitive events. Absolutely nothing wrong with net decking. I'm not going to take a crap on it because, in Modern, I started playing janky decks, but then I was loaned a Humans deck. I won a large event in my city, and fell in love with it. So I bought the humans deck. Now it's tribal, but it's not janky because, at least for a while there, it was top level. So, and my build was coming off recommendations off the internet. So I'm not going to say I'm poo-pooing net decking, but in general, when I'm building decks, especially with the goal of having fun jank go off, I'm trying to put them together myself. As I said earlier, this is all about putting these pieces together on my own, figuring out with suggestions from other people, but it's my concoction ultimately. And, net decking takes away that fun again. So that's why I prefer to do it myself. And so that leads me oftentimes to not play top tier decks. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes I do. Like I said, I got into humans, love it. But other times, yeah, I will bring what I wanted to put together. At the same time, and like I said, we're eschewing top level decks a lot of the time, and the proven winners. But this is not to say that we do not want to be competitive. And I don't want that to be misunderstood. The nature of this game is competitive. This is set up at every level except Commander. It is set up to be 1 versus 1, with whoever accomplishes a certain goal winning. So this is, by its very nature, this game is, and in Commander, it's not 1v1, but it's still, your goal is to be the last person standing. Your goal is to be the winner. So by its very nature, this game is competitive. And there's no point in putting together a deck if you're not going to be able to compete and try to win. So when I'm putting together a deck, I don't completely eschew quality removal, because you know what? A lot of times, to pull off your combo or whatever you need to buy time. So you're going to use top level removal to try to get there, to buy yourself that time to then go and do your fun janky thing. So ultimately, I guess the way to put it is, we still want to win. We still want to build a competitive deck. If we're just going to throw a bunch of random crap together, okay, fine. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about it. What makes good jank? So that's our next big question. The next what? What makes good jank? And the first thing that comes to mind, it's effectiveness. If a deck has a bunch of cool cards in it, but they don't work, and they don't ever win, then it's no good. So ultimately, just to bring this back to the idea of the competitiveness, we want to win still, but we want to do it with style. So also then, okay, so now we go to continuing to look at what makes good jank. Like I said, we want to balance the janky fun with the effectiveness. So as I said, using removal, using tempo, using other cards to buy us time. Because let's face it, a lot of times, jank almost always requires more than one card to come together to pull something off. Almost. So you need to buy time for that. You need to set something up. You need to protect certain cards. So to pull that together, even like tribal, that requires a bunch of cards of the same tribe. So like even humans, even my humans deck. So, you need to buy that time, and that's why using quality removal, using quality tempo is necessary. There are times, though, when I build a deck and I just go all into the jank. I go, you know what? I'm not going to worry about card draw. I'm not going to worry about removal. We're going all in, because that, to me, and I could be mistaken, but that to me is the most effective route to try to win with this particular flavor of jank. So it's a mix and match. It just depends, because ultimately, most of the time in Constructed, you're building 60 card decks. At some point, I want to build a Canlander deck. That's 100. But any way you slice it, you usually have limits to how much you can put in a deck. And so you have to build within those limits. Now, when we say limits, there's always a minimum. There's never actually a maximum, but you don't want to play with beyond the minimum because you just put yourself at greater risk of not finding the card you want to find. So what we have to do is realize that, okay, we have to balance a certain number. There has to be a certain number of lands. Curve has to be a certain level. Okay, sometimes it's just not going to work putting this removal or this removal in, and they might buy us only a little bit of time. Maybe it's more effective just to come at them. Maybe that's our removal, is come at them quickly. Now, also, back to the question of what makes good jank, there's one other thing. It has to be fun. This has to be a fun combination. You have to be doing something that you find it to be fun. Is it something your opponent has to find fun? No, it's just no. Sometimes your opponent's going to be like, wow, that was awesome. But most times, or, an arena, nice. But most times, it's going to suck because if this works, this works the way you want it to work, your opponent is going to lose. And that sucks. So, yeah. It's more your fun we're thinking about. But if it's not fun, if this is a dreary way to grind out a game of Magic, it's not worth it. So that's something to think about. When building a deck, to me, that's a hallmark of jank. Now, let's talk about my favorite jank. And, that's a pretty wide spectrum. My jank pantry is full. I'm well stocked. But number one favorite jank is big butts. Okay, so if you're wondering, and by all means, if you haven't already, check our deck techs on our YouTube channel, Jankyard MTG. There's a deck tech from before Theros Beyond Death came in, where I showed my butts deck and I talked about why I love big butts. I mean, I like big butts and I cannot lie. No other Planeswalker can deny. So the origins of this comes... I started with Battle for Zendikar, and that was... Well, my very first Limited was actually Dragons of Tarkir, but I really got going in Limited with Battle for Zendikar. Started doing Constructed after Oath of Gatewatch into Shadows over Innistrad. And that's when I really started to build Constructed Standard decks. And, very poorly in the beginning and just with, the pieces I had lying around. But one of the cards that grabbed me from Shadows was Triskaidekaphobia, which we spoke about earlier. So the next set, Eldritch Moon, gave us Tree of Perdition. And Tree of Perdition is an 013 Defender tree for 3 and a black. And what it says is that when you can tap it and exchange Tree of Perdition's toughness with your opponent's life total. So you can take your opponent's life to 13. And then Triskaidekaphobia can go off and kill them. It was a combo. I saw it right away, and I'm like, I have to build with this. This looks too much fun. How do I figure out how to build with it? And then I started looking into building in Modern, and I knew I couldn't afford to, at the time, to build a big fancy top-level deck. I'm like, well, I love Tree of Perdition. How do I build with it? And people have pointed out to me the card Assault Formation, which allows... It says your defenders do combat damage with their toughness. And if you pay a green, it allows defenders to attack as if they did not have defender. Now, the little extra wrinkle is then I got introduced to a legendary card called Doran the Siege Tower. Doran says that all creatures, period, It's symmetrical, both sides of the battlefield. All creatures do damage with their toughness instead of their power. And Doran's an 05 for Abzan. So, yeah, this was. I'm like, okay, this is exciting. I could build a deck where I could attack with Tree of Perdition, because who doesn't want to attack with a 13/13? So I started discovering more of these cards that had big butts. Now, okay, I didn't get into that earlier. Let's get into that. Why is it big butts? So if you don't know this already, and I had to have somebody explain this to me, the whole thing is that the two numbers, power and toughness, power comes first, then there's the slash, then toughness. So it's the toughness number is your back number, the back end of that combination. It's at the back. If you read left to right, it's the back number. So it's the butt. So there is a terminology in Magic that if you've got creatures with small power, low power, and high toughness, they've got big butts. Because also they got big butts, they can block better. They can swing their butt around to block, and so that's why it was called big butts. I had one friend at my Magic store referred to a weekly event at a bar here in my home city, and said, "Wait a minute, are you building Booty Shake Mondays the deck?" I'm like, that's perfect, yes. And I've actually put Booty Shake Mondays on official DCI forms for entering different tournaments at times. I've put other names on my Big Butts decks. I've brought Big Butts decks to competitive tournaments. The success rate hasn't been great, but you pull things off. But I've brought I've submitted forms to judges, and in the name has been stuff like no one can deny, or I cannot lie, just references to the Sir Mix-a-Lot song, I Like Big Butts. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun for me. I played it in Modern to start, and then when Arcades was brought into M19, Arcades the Strategist, which said all defenders do damage with their toughness, and all defenders are allowed to attack as though they didn't have defender, I started to build a big defender walls deck in standard, and it was pretty janky because I only had the 4 enablers. Whereas in modern I was running 4 assault formations and 3 or 4 Dorans. So standard just started to have Arcades, and so I only played that deck sparingly because you were digging to try to find one of your 4 Arcades and hoped it didn't get smited. And then in Ravnica Allegiances along came High Alert. High Alert is so much fun. And High Alert to me is the Swiss Army knife of any of the big butt enablers. And if you hear me talk about enablers, what I'm saying is those are the cards that allow your creatures or creatures in general to do damage with their toughness as opposed to combat damage with their toughness as opposed to their power. And High Alert is the best one. It's a blue and a white, and because it allows you to do damage with your toughness, any creature you control, and it allows defenders to attack as though they didn't have defender. And also, for 2, a white and a blue, it allows you to untap target creature. So the reason it is the best, and it's the Swiss Army knife, is it does everything you want to do. It allows your defenders to swing, and it allows all your creatures to do damage with their toughness. There's no caveats. So with all the other big butts enablers out there, like Watley's Sun's Heart, the Planeswalker from War of the Spark, her static ability says that creatures you control do combat damage with their toughness, but it says nothing about allowing defenders to attack. Arcades says all defenders can do damage with their toughness instead of their power. However, and also it says that defenders can attack, but it's only defenders. So even Arcades is a 3/5, and if it's only out in the battlefield and you've got like a wall of mist that's hitting for 5, Arcades is only going to hit for 3. So it's got that caveat. Assault formation, it's like High Alert. It allows defenders to attack, but you have to pay 1 green for those defenders to attack. High Alert, it's just comes with it. And Doran is like Watley. Doran says that creatures do damage with their combat damage with their toughness, not their power, but says nothing about defender. So that's why High Alert's my favorite. It's the Swiss Army knife. And so when it came out, and then we got Watley as just an add-on, I've been playing a lot of butts in Standard, and it's great. And when you're building butts, then you're looking for 1 mana 0/4s, because effectively, here's the thing: when with all those effects, you are not changing the power or toughness. Some people think you're flipping them. You're not. Effectively, your creature becomes a 4/4. Now, on Arena, you'll watch, it will actually, when you go to combat, it will show 4/4, but it's not a 4/4. Don't be mistaken, because some people are like, oh, okay, now its power is 4, I'm going to kill it with this instant that says destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. Well, it's not. And that's why Arena is a little misleading in that. It does not change the power, but effectively, it would attack as a 4/4. Wall of Mist, which is a 2 mana 0/5, effectively attacks as a 5/5. So, I mean, yeah, 1 mana 4/4s, or 3/3s even, or 2 mana 5/5s, or flying 4/4s. Why wouldn't you want to play that? That's awesome. So, ultimately, yeah, Butts is all about turning stuff sideways. I do have a story. Very recently, I played my Butts deck in Pioneer, and I'm just tweaking with it, playing different things here and there. But in fact, my opponent was playing blue-white control. We had a very grindy second game. I had won the first one. We had a very grindy second game. Ultimately, I let him have it. Or I conceded because he had me. He'd ultimated Teferi, and he's like blowing stuff off my battlefield. And so I'm like, yeah, okay, you got me. And he goes, okay, so we had 5 minutes left. So, okay, there's only 5 minutes left. You want to call it a draw? I'm like, no, this is an aggro deck. We can make this work. Which, it was not very aggro in the previous game. But I was on the play. Turn 1, this is one of my favorite cards in my Butts deck right now. Turn 1 was Arboreal Grazer off a Botanical Sanctum. And so the Grazer comes in and they play a Hallowed Fountain tapped. Untap. So he just played the tap, I think, Hallowed Fountain. Untapped. I then play an untapped land. Then I play Assault Formation for 1 and a green. Swing for 3 with Arboreal Grazer. And then with the 1 other mana, I cast Tasseled Dromedary. It's a 1 of in the deck, but it's a 1 mana 0/4. It's just 1 single white mana for an 0/4 vanilla camel. How can you not love a vanilla camel? In the current Standard, I would use Yoked Ox, which is the same thing. It's a white 0/4, except it's not a camel. But anyways, yeah, so I played the Tasseled Dromedary. Pass the turn. He plays another tapped Hallowed Fountain. So he's got 1 mana up. I'm guessing he's maybe holding it for opt because he's maybe hurting. I'm not sure. But anyways, we pass the turn. He passes the turn back to me. Turn 3. Now on my draw step on turn 2, I pulled out one of my favorite cards for my Butts deck, and that is Tower Defense. Tower Defense is an instant for 1 and a green. And it says, all of your creatures gain reach and +0/+5 until end of turn. It is a plus. So in my deck, with the enablers, it is effectively a +5/+5 anthem for all of my creatures if I have an enabler out to attack. Which in this case, I have Assault Formation. Yeah, I can do it. So I go, okay, swing with both. So the dromedary swinging for 4 because it's an 0-4. Grazer swinging for 3 because it's an 0-3. My opponent's already at 17 life because he took the hit from Grazer previous. And he goes, okay, no blocks, nothing I can do. I'll take 7. And I said, tap 2 of my mana, tower defense. Let's make it 17. And he just started to laugh. He's like, well done. You got me. So that is a rarity. A turn 3 kill is a rarity, but it's possible. And I got to say, the fact that they reprinted Tower Defense. It's originally from Return to Ravnica, and I've been playing it in Modern, but they reprinted it in Ravnica Allegiances. So it's also been in Standard now for the last year. Oh, I love it so much. I was so happy when I saw they put it in. So that's my favorite. But there are a lot of things I really like. And we've kind of touched on things already. Alternate win conditions. Oh, I love stuff like Revel in Riches, mechanized production. We mentioned Tempest, the All-Seeing. Another alternate win condition I love, but is in its own class, is Mill. Causing your opponent, or if you've got Jace or Thassa's Oracle, causing yourself to run out of cards in your library. That's a lot of fun. And so I love doing that. Something else, like I said, funky tribal. Give me a crazy, quirky tribal. I'll play with it. That's a lot of fun. I've done Rogues tribal in recent Standard, which was kind of cool. Fairy tribal, Satyr tribal. It's unusual. You don't see them at the highest levels, but they're still fun to play. And also then, again, those quirky rares that you know are stone unplayable in Limited. But you just want to make them work, and you just want to build around them. A great example for me, the one that comes to mind and is very dear to my heart, is Sunbird's Invocation. Sunbird's Invocation is from Amonkhet. It is a 6 generic mana and 1 red. Sorry, 5 generic mana and 1 red. Enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. You may cast a card revealed this way with converted mana cost X or less without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. That's so much fun. Casting... one time I cast a Brass's Bounty, which was 7 mana, so I got to dig 7 down. And I found a Marionette Master and was able just to put it on the battlefield, put the Fabricate triggers and make it a 4/6. And then because of Brass's Bounty, I had 7 treasures, so I was able to sack all those 7 treasures, and Marionette Master did 4 damage for each treasure I had sacrificed. So, but yeah, Sunbird's Invocation, it's one of those, it's crazy cards that I really like playing. So I always look in new decks, I always look for those rares. I think in Theros Beyond Death, Thassa's Oracle jumped out at me. Those rares that are really unusual, that worth playing. Now, Thassa's Oracle is very usable, very playable in Standard. But there are other ones you're just like, this is not Standard, in Limited. There's other ones you look in Limited and you're like, I can't play this. Yeah, that's not why they're there. So, I mean, now you've gotten kind of dug deep into my brain and why I decided to start doing the Jankyard. And it's initially been streaming and some deck techs, but we're going to grow. We're hoping to have more articles, the weekly podcast, and all this. So as we're moving forward, I want to talk to you about what you can expect and why I want you to spend a little bit of time with me each week. We're going to do a nice mix of podcasts. Some are going to be like this, just me, and talking about different decks, different archetypes, different play styles, and just other ways to maximize your fun in playing Magic. Other ones are going to be interviews. I'm going to talk to other people who also like to build jank, or talking about how to maximize your jank, to play better jank. And we've got a few different people lined up, so we'll start getting those interviews going very soon. The hope is down the road also we can get some of you, some of our listeners, some of our patrons to be interviewees on episodes of the Jankyard, the podcast. We'll have a plan set up in the near future, because if you're here, chances are you like playing these fun, quirky decks, so you've probably got some good ideas that you want to discuss. So I think that would be awesome to sit down and interview our different listeners to get some of their ideas. Coming up in the near future, we're going to have some talking about how I build decks, some of my favorite, digging into some of my favorite archetypes and some of my favorite decks. Also, we're going to have an episode or two of me just sitting down and brainstorming ideas, especially in Pioneer. I've got a lot of real estate to build in Pioneer, and so I want to sit down and you're going to hear my thought process. I'm just going to sit there. I'm going to start lining up the cards I want to play and researching the cards on Scryfall and doing all these other things. And you'll hear that process. I'll talk it out for you. And also, I mean, part of it is I want to get your feedback. I want to submit your comments. And then another subject matter we're going to dive into is control. Control is the arch nemesis of jank, because control tells us we can't bring our funness together, can't bring our fun cards together and make our symmetry or synergies and our combos work. Control is that killjoy, really. And I'm going to do one podcast talking about coping with control, not just playing with it and how to deal with it as a player, but how to cope with the situation of you want to have fun, you want to play these combos, and the opponent is not letting you. How do you mentally deal with that? So I want to talk about that. I think that's going to be really good. So that brings us to the end of the first episode of The Jankyard, the podcast. And I just ask everybody, come on back here every Tuesday for the latest edition of The Jankyard, the podcast. Also, feel free to submit your comments. Either if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can submit your comments here, or feel free to send us a message on Facebook or Twitter, or email us at jankyardmtg@gmail.com. Also, you can check out our website, jankyardmtg.com. It's coming along. It needs some work, but it's coming. And you can check us out there as well. Don't forget to watch some of these janky decks I like to build in action on Wednesdays and Sundays, and sometimes other days on our stream at twitch.tv/jankyardmtg. And also check out our deck ticks on our YouTube channel and our weekly Jank Light of the Week. So I think that brings me to the end of this first episode. This has been a lot of fun, and I want to thank you for taking your time to listen to my thoughts on jank. And I look forward to talking to you as we continue on this this fun journey deep into the depths of the Jankyard. So we'll touch base with you next week, once again on the Jankyard, the podcast.